ka tākere hai a te āhuarangi. E mōhio ana tātou he paru nui I puta mai ki Aotearoa I ngā ahumahi, I ngā pāmu, I te tini me te mano e haere ana marunga waka. Ka wera te ao, e tere rawa tēnei āhuatanga. Tēnā koutou katoa, po hine kātō ingoa. He kai arihi au ki rungi I tēnei ara hikoi, kia mārama te take ara te tākere haia āhuarangi. Me haere tātou ki te taihoro nukurangi ki te kōrero ki etihi o ngā kaimahi.
I'm Dr. James Renwick. I work as a climate scientist at NIWA in Wellington, and I'm the science leader for climate variability and change research, which means I lead our main climate research program here at NIWA.
Ko Savern Aho no tūwhare tō me Waimana anō hoki. I'm the General Manager of Māori Development and Oceans Research at the National Institute of Water and Atmosphere. The evidence now is it's overwhelming. So people have moved on and they're looking at the changes in ecosystems. What is the impact of climate change on ecosystems? These are, taonga species for Māori.
Native species headed for extinction by later this century, and just the fragmentation of the natural landscape already isn't good news for a lot of natural ecosystems. Climate change is about there being more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, largely carbon dioxide and methane. So we've got a lot of agriculture happening in New Zealand, and a lot of our greenhouse gas emissions come from sheep and cows burping mostly, not farting actually, it's more coming out the other end. So New Zealand is often billed as the industrialised country that has the big methane emissions. To mitigate climate change, we just have to be putting less of that stuff into the air.
My name is Eric Brenstrom. I work here as a severe weather forecaster, trying to work out how many millimetres we're going to get in a heavy rainfall event and how deep the snow is going to be and whether or not the wind's going to be strong enough to start ripping tree branches off and damaging roofs and that sort of thing. When we look at the global average temperature over recent years, we've found around 10 of the hottest years on record since we had thermometers working have all occurred in the last 12 years. Australia is our near neighbour, and they've had a drought that is variously described as the worst in 100 years or perhaps the worst in 1,000 years.
Ko te wai he oranga mo te tangata, mo te whenua. Kia kore he wai, ka mate noa. Hei tēnei wā, ka iti haere te wai o ngā puna wai, o ngā koawa, angara e heke mai ana, ka timata te whakataetai mo te wai. Kia kore he wai, ka mate noa. Tata ki te ono marama, kua noho kore wai tēnei kāinga kai here taunga. Kai Bridge Pai kōrero mai a Kevin Tamati.
We've had a long dry summer this year, and all the farmers will tell you that well, you just have to look at the paddocks, look at the hills. It's all dry. It's a small community of 90 homes. A lot of the homes have kaumātua and kuia in. There's young children as well. This is our swimming hole here behind me. Well, it used to be when we were kids growing up. As soon as the creek goes dry, you just wait for the first call. Oh, cuz, we got no water. And that's our problem, I guess. It's happening too often, and the periods of drought are getting longer and longer.
Ko titiro mai nei I Wanganui o mātou I roto krongatāhi I konei tēne o tātou iwi, hapu, karatahi e wai. Mōhio tātou, ia rā, ko ta tīmatanga o tā rā, ko ta wai. Me pēhana, ka haere koe te wharapaku, ko ta wai. Ka horo koe tau ringara, ko ta wai. Ka unu, ka kai, ko ta wai. E tino aroha au ki ngā mokopuna nei, I te mea ka hara mai ngā mokopuna ki te kohanga reo, ko koratu au kia rātou āta whakaro ki te wai. I te mea ka hareherere te wai I tēnei rangi, I te mea ka harehe nawhi te wai I Wānguru I tō mātou whare, I konei, te kohanga reo. Hoki muri au ki nā tau 1928, rima tekau mā waru pēr ka nuku mai au I Wanganui, here here taunga. Kāre mātou e whakakore he wai. Kei te haere tunu te wai, kāre mātou e ki o. Wahi o tēnā, e āta haere, kāre kaore. I te wā, I hara mai nā Pākehā nei, I tipu mai o rātou, nā hua rākau, nā hua whenua I roto o rātou Pātiki, ānai nei, ko rere ati te wai, ko tai ati ki a rātou, kei te mahi rātou, ta nuinga o te wai, en ko wahi o mai mātou, ka retahi wai I Wanganui tēnei o nā hapu, I te me, he aha, nā rātou, ko tēnā taku kōratu, ko te he nā rātou, I te me kara rātou te whakaaro ki nā hapu, ki nā whānau, kei Wanganui I tēnei I roto a krongatā I nai nei. He maumahara tātou, e ta nuinga o tātou, ka titiratu ki nā Pāke, kei te rere te wai, ia rā, ia pō. Mahua mai mātou nā whānau I roto krongatā nei, ka retahi wai. Anai nei, ko titiru atu au, ka hara mai te Pāke, ka mau mai o rātou trak, ka whakaki e rātu upu I te whakaki, te mahua mai he wai, heha, ka hara mai nā whānau I konei, I runga o rātou traka, I runga o rātou mutuka, te whakaki o rātou Pākete, e rātu āhau, heha, ka retahi wai I roto o rātou whare.
You know, when you've got commercial bores at 150 metres to rural or whānau bores at 25 feet, crikeys. It's a dozen to one that's very soon the whānau is going to get beaten up.
Hei tēnei wā ka iti haere te wai o ngā puna o ngā koawa. A ngā rai heke mai ana ka timata he wakataitai mo te wai. I tēnei wā, kei ngā kaunihira ārohe, te mana tohatoha atu I te wai. Ka whakamarama mai a rātou ture a Susie Oswald-Dalston.
The predictions that are coming out at the moment for climate change is that the extreme weather is going to become more extreme. For example, our rainfall events are going to become more intense and our dry periods are going to become longer. On average, there is likely to be a reduction in rainfall. In some catchments where there is high allocation, I can see it being more competitive. There's many small catchments that are relatively short from the top of the catchment to the sea, and also in the groundwater there's a lot of small isolated groundwater aquifers, for example around the eastern coastline. We currently don't have any formal policy on how much water can be allocated within a catchment. We have formal policy on how much water needs to be maintained in a water resource or a stream. For example, you can't reduce the flow of a stream to below a certain level, but we currently don't have that policy on how much water can be totally allocated in a catchment. There are some areas where we've said that you can only take for reasonable domestic needs from any surface water, but in the majority of areas you can take for your reasonable domestic and your stock drinking needs as of right. And also in a lot of areas too, for surface water, you can take an additional volume of 10 cubic metres per day as of right, provided specific criteria is met. And that includes things like not affecting any downstream users or adversely affecting any indigenous wetlands or dune lakes or spring flows and stream flows downstream. Because of the nature of our water resources and the fact that the heavy rainfall events don't occur when we need it the most, water storage is going to become quite a key component to sustainable water management. Dams are also an alternative. We do actually encourage small dams that are not in the run of the stream, in other words those that are in the dry gullies that are just intercepting rainfall runoff and not stream runoff. So we encourage these in our plans by making them more permissive than other consents.
Ko te wai he oranga mo ngā pāmu, mo ngā marakai, mo ngā tangata katoa meki. Kia ora I tātou, me kohi wai I te kāinga mo te whānau, me ngā ipu nunui mo te hapu, ā ki roto I ngā pāpuni mo te iwi whānui. I tuku iho ki a tātou ngā Māori, he mana whenua, he mana moana, He mana hoki ki te kohikohi, te toha atu he wai. He ara roa, he ara tā pokopoko mā ngā iwi a haere ana ki te kāwanatanga kia āhei ngā mana Māori. Atu i ngā kereme, ka tāia tonu e tātou te kohia he wai. Kai parehaka at miringo hohaia I kōrero mai.
We're on the Parihaka land next to the pā, and we're up on a hill where just over here there's an old reservoir that was built about 1881, and there's to feed that reservoir off a ram pump down in the creek down over here about a half a kilometre away. And then in the 1980s we put a turbine in down there which just ran off the water flow and pumped water all the way up here to fill that reservoir. Then we put a reticulation system into the pā, big 80mm pipes right through the whole pā, and then we tapped into a spring about 5 kilometres inland up towards the mountain, and we gravity fed spring water down here into that system. And then in 2006, in preparation for the first Parihaka International Peace Festival, we built this 2 million litre spring water reservoir to feed water to the festival as well as a backup for the pā. Ratapua just got a bulldozer up here and just dug a big hole in the top of the laha here because it's all laha mounds, as you can see from the landscape. So this one here has got no rock in it. It was just been a matter of getting a bulldozer in here, digging a pit at the same time as building a bit of a wall on this north side and on the south side. And so the whole thing is self-supporting. And we just line it with a rubber skin, which is not even very costly. We can provide water to this entire 200-acre block here, which the festival site's based on. We also supply the water to 2 dairy farms down on the seaward side of us. Yeah, there's major drought down here and a lot of farmers were in a bad way, but our water supply's fine.
Tēnei kāinga I roto ngā kōrero mā te mātu tēnei taha no te katoa. Ko te āhua ki ngā kaitiaki o te maraini, nā ko Ngāti Korokoro tēnei, ko Ngāti Whārara. Ko I tērā ko ngā hapu nui roto I tēnei takiua, ka riro I roto I ngā heke whakapapa, ko rātou te iwi e whai tika ki te whenua. Muiti I tēnei paipa ka hono, mea hono te paipa ki roto I te aua. Ko te aua I konei, koni atu I te kaukiromita te tawhiti. Nā, ki te ake koutou I te tawhiti mai o te rerenga mai o te paipa. No reira, kei reira te puaretanga o te paipa nei, ka heke mai I te kaha o te heke ngane, hula kau pampu, hula kau hiko, ka heke mai I tōna kahano. Nā, ki te koe, te manaki o te aua. Ne? Ke heke mai I te aua, mai I te maunga I ruara, ka tāmai ki konei he tohu manaki no te tupuna. Ka hanga I tōna whare anō, ne? He whare hei manaki I tā ahua o ngā mihini, me te mahi nui o ngā mihini nei hei whakapai I te wai. Nā, kei kone ngā momo, hei kaupapa, hei ata tātari I te wai. Hei tango I ngā momo manga I ngā rau o te rākau, I ngā momo paru, I ngā momo kirikiri ko hatu. Ka rere mai te wai ki roto I ni momo mihini nei tū nei. Ko I tēne ko tā te mahi, hei hōpu ne. Hōpu katou e rā momo mea kei roti te wai. Ngari te wai e rere anāno. Ki kone ki roto ngā momo paipa, heke mai ki roti wini me toru. Kei roto rā ko ngā momo ringa, mā kore he ringa. Hei tango mai, I ngā momo paru, I ngā momo kohatu kei roti te wai. Hei hōpu ake, hei whakapiri katoa I ngā momo mea kei roti te wai, whakapiri katoa I ki wini momo e pātu, ne? Ka kake mai te wai ki roti tēni paipa, nā ka rere mai te wai ki roti tēni tramu, Kei roti te traumu ko ngā momo raiti. Ngā momo raiti. Ko te kaha o te raiti, ka nui tōna rite ki te kaha o tamanui te rā. Pina tatatāti ke tamanui te rā, huna ka toro tātou ne. Ko i tēne ko te mahi o ngā momo raiti kei roto nei, hei pēra te rite ne, hei wero i te wai. Kia patua i ngā momo ngāngara kei roti i te wai. I ngā momo mea, momo mea puta mai ane ngā kalarehe. Koe tahi wera mea paru, puta mai a tāu e ta tangata. Nā wēni momo mihi ni, ka patu ai. Ka patu ai wera mea katoa, kia mate ai wera mea katoa, ke puta ai ko te wai mā. He wai e tika ana no ki inu mea te tangata.
Te take, no te mea he puna kaukau rongonui tērā ki ngā tauhi puta noa i tukiponga i taua rohe, i taua wāhi, no te mea e tai o mātou tamariki e kura ana ki tōku kura, ko tērā puna kaukau ko i reira rātou, ko ngā aopo, ao ata i reira rātou e kaukau ana ki roto i te wai. Ka tai te kaunihira katū he tohu whakatūpato e ki ana kaua e kaukau ki konei, nā mai kona ka taka te kapa o mātou rangatahi ki te whakaora i tō tata awa no te mea he pai tēnei wāhi mō rātou, mena ka waiho rātou kia mate noa atu, mate moa, ka pēhea mō tātou uri whakaeke e piki mai nei, ka pēhea tātou. Nā reira mai kona ka taka te kapa, whakatikangia i tēnei awa kia pai ake o tātou uri whakaeke. Mai kona ka tūtaki mātou ki ngā tangata no te kaunihira o whāngarei, no enei momo rōpū katoa no roto o tō mātou rohe, ki te haere mai, ki te awhina i tō tātou kura ki te whakatika i tēnei awa. Tuatahi ka haere mātou ki te wāhi, ki te taho o te awa ka tiki ngā kākono kua taka mai ngā rākau e tū ana ki reira. Mai kona ka whakahoki mātou i awa kākono ki tō tātou whare tāpapa i reira whakatupu ngā rākau. I te wā kua tupu, kua pakari awa rākau ka whakahokia ki te wāhi i tikina, i rapua awa kākono ka whakatō ki reira. Ko te take o tēnā, ka taia awa rākau te tupu pai ake ki te wāhi kua tikina mai me ki. He harakeke, he kaikatea awa momo rākau me ki ngā rākau Māori, kia whakatō ki te awa, no te mea he pai ake awa rākau ki ngā mea o wiwi o whenua ke. Ko awa kura, te take kua kāhui katoa mātou enei kura, kia rongo awa kura e wā mātou mahi hoki, mai kona ka taria awa kura i ngā pukenga kua hopu kina i mātou, ka whakahoki ki a rātou tamariki, mai kona ka ako tonu i wā mātou pukenga hau kua tīpakongia e mātou. Ko tōku whakautu ki tērā i nā kore he wai ka mate tātou. Kore e taia te pēhea.
Ko tā aku te James Renwick, he mema o te rōpū rangatira Kaipūtai ao, te IPCC. Ara, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Ka hui ai te IPCC, he rōpū aru tūruki i te āhuarangi, o tēnā pito o te ao, o tēnā pito o te ao, huri no. Ka wānangi hia kia mōhio hea te āhuarangi, ara ka pēhea te ao o muri nei.
The latest IPCC report, this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, came out last year. The eastern North Island especially was identified as a hotspot for coastal inundation and coastal erosion. The oceans are warming like the rest of the climate system, and that warming's been measured right down pretty much to the bottom of the ocean, down to at least 3,000 metres anyway, and the average depth of the ocean's about 4,000 metres. So the ocean's warming right down to its depths. And like most things, water expands as it warms up, so the depth of the ocean is increasing from that just thermal expansion, but also because glaciers and things ice sheets on land are melting, and that water's flowing into the ocean, of course. So the ocean sea levels are rising about 3 millimetres per year at the moment, which again, it doesn't sound like much, but over 10 years that's 3 centimetres, over a century it's 30 or 40, and that rate is increasing, so we're looking at more like maybe half a metre of sea level rise through this century, which when you think about it, you know, again, it doesn't sound like much, but beaches are pretty flat things, and you raise the sea level half a metre, that'll push the tide line inland quite a long way.
Distance provides a shield to your weapons, and psychological abuse.
The whole area is a huge significance to us, and to see the deterioration that's happened over the years, it's quite a sad thing. The amount of sea that's come up over the years, actually just recent years, even Te Onero Atohe, the amount of coastline that's been pushed back. There used to be all sand dunes all along the whole beach, now it's just a huge bank. And one storm, I think it was last year, when we had a huge swell, we had gale force northwest winds, and it just pushed everything back over the road onto the houses. From that storm on, it's left Te Onero Atohe a completely different place. Our tuatua beds have receded, they've gone away, they're quite hard to find at the moment. Tohero have actually disappeared. It's affected them over in Teneke there, whereas people are all trying to sell their houses on the beachfront there, and there's that much backup over the sewage systems and whatnot now that it's affecting the other side there over in Teneke. With the last few storms that we've had in the last couple of years, the big retaining walls have actually been moved and pushed out onto the main road itself, and the tide's actually gone across onto the lawns of other houses. I think it's just the rise of the seas now, and the global warming that's occurred over the years too. Now it's starting to kick us in the butt now.
With sea level rise and storminess and the chances of inundation and so on, I think a lot of the low-lying parts of the country will have problems.
He maha ngā papakainga e noho perita tāna ki te taku taimoana. Kai reira he whare puni, he whare kai, ngā māra kai, he whare noho, kohanga reo, kai reira hoki ngā urupa. Ka piki ake ngā moana, huri noa I te ao, ka ngaro e te heo tātou papakainga. Kai tā wahi, e whakarite ana e te hi taone nunui ki te nuku kiuta ki runga I ngā puke. Ka pauri hoki ngā tangata no e te heo ngā mautire o te moana nui a kiwa, ka kitea te whenua e toromi ai.
The expectation is by the end of this century, the ocean will be more acid on average than it has been for about 20 million years, which is probably not good news for anything that lives in the ocean. Especially microorganisms in the ocean really don't like the acidity. Anything that's trying to grow a little carbonate shell is just going to find it harder and harder as the seawater becomes more acid to actually do that. So if any part of that bottom of the food chain in the ocean falls over, then there's going to be big knock-on effects right through the whole food web in the ocean. There's been observations from the fossil record basically of times in the past where there's been a lot more carbon dioxide in the air, so a lot more greenhouse world, and the oceans have been more acid, and you know, a large fraction, over 90% of the species in the ocean just died off. Big catastrophic extinctions, and I don't know that we'd really want that to happen. Commercial shell fisheries, aquaculture around the country, this is likely to become more of a problem for those industries because, again, a more acid ocean makes it harder for things like mussels and so on to grow their shells properly as the young are growing up. So yeah, we're going to have to find ways of dealing with that too.
Koe nei ngā take, ia tau, ka wera haere tō tātou nei ao. Ka taura ki te whenua hei te wā raumati. Nā te wera haere, ka huri ngā moana ki te waikawa a ka mate haere. Nā te wera, ka rewanga hukapapa, ka piki mai ngā moana a ka kake mai ngā tauhoronuku ki runga I te mato te whenua.
It's a funny one, rainfall, because the air's warmer, you have more moisture in the air, so when it rains, likely to be heavier rain. But for eastern regions, the gaps between the rainfall events likely to get longer and warmer, so the soils dry out faster. So you have the situation where you've got droughts more often, but you've also got more floods when it's raining. So again, that idea that there's just more extremes at both ends of the scale. With the tropics being a little bit closer, the chance of there being cyclones coming out of the tropics affecting New Zealand, certainly not a lot more than we've got now, but the ones that occur are likely to be more powerful, again because you've got warmer seas, warmer air, more moisture, more energy, so possibly more devastating when they happen. If you've got more tropical-like storms heading our way, a lot of those tend to run down the eastern side of the country. So you get these big rainfall events, a little like the Cyclone Bowler event from 20 odd years ago. The big storm that happened in 2004, that eroded a lot of hillsides in the northern Manawatu and around that part of the central North Island. And I think that kind of event, or that kind of effect on the landscape, likely to become more common in future.
Kia ora, ko pāhia tūria tōku ingoa. Kei te marae o Wangahu mātou e kōrero ana I raro I te taumare o Ngāti Rangi Wakatūria, tō mātou nei hapu. The marae's been down here for over 100 years now. There had been some pretty major rain, and they knew that the river levels were rising. No one actually knew how bad it was actually going to be, and probably within a period of 6 hours there was water from one side of those hills over there right through the valley, right through to the other side. Here in Ware, it went right through the Ware. We've actually taken this section of the Ware out here. We had to go 2 foot up the wall and basically remove all the linings and let all the walls dry out. Then we had to have people come through and had to basically go through with a chemical wash and wash everything out. And even today we're still finding debris and stuff from the 04 floods. The government and the Ministry for the Environment and Horizons and local council and civil defence have told us it's a 1 in 100 year flood, and we haven't got anything to worry about. And then we're open all of probably might have been 3 or 4 months, and bang, we got hit again. It was crushing. It sort of crushed the spirit of the people because we'd put so much time back into bringing ourselves back up to be able to operate. It was time for us to start to look at how we could start to take into account the effect that global warming is going to start having upon us and living where we are.
Ka kino ngai ngā āwha, e pupuhi kaha mai te hau, he ke kaha mai te ua, hena I te taone o Kaio.
The only warning that we got was my daughter running out of her bedroom, holding her newborn baby with her, and crying, telling me that the water was coming into her room. It hit them quite hard. They were, they were in tears, they were crying because the bedroom was getting full of water. Anything could have happened. The power came through the house, everything was still on, the power hadn't gone off. We were running around trying to lift things, trying to save what we could save.
So we grabbed what we could, chucked it in rubbish bags, held our kids above our heads and made our way down the street to the saddlery, which was our saviour.
We were looking at our neighbours that living in business across the street. She was being carried out of her building by people who were trying to help her. Local people, fire brigade, who were walking around making sure all those people that they could get to were okay, which they weren't. Even waist height places, you couldn't walk through it because of the danger of being swept away. I was walking around in my knees, and even it was difficult to walk around then because of the push of it coming down through the catchment.
Then you have the outer reaches like Matangiro, Pupuki, all over those areas was exactly the same. There's rivers through those areas. We had marae that were devastated, matangero. We had homes in Pupuki that were devastated due to the creek going through there.
99 days after the flood, we had completed our part of the clean-up in our whare, which was replacing floors, replacing walls, replacing furniture, everything that we could replace. The day before, we were getting ready to move back into our home. And as we were getting ready to move in, our local constable again, the siren went off. And he said, Bryce, I wouldn't advise that you move back in just yet because there's another 120 mils of rain coming tonight.
After the first flood, yeah, we just soldiered on, you know. I was not too fussed, as long as my kids were fine and that, yeah, I just soldiered on. But after the second flood, I wanted out of here, you know. How it affects you in your mind, it's just like how can you've been through it once, you never want to go through it again, then you go through it 100 days later.
Who did it surprise? It surprised everybody.
Nā te wera haere ka taka te ohanga o ngā ahumahi, pēnei i te hieka, te ahu moana, te ahu whenua me te ahu one. Tuatahi ka ngaro te mahi me te pūtea mō ngā toko maha tangata i mahi i konei. Katahi, ka ngaro te nuinga o te kai hoko ana tātou mai ienei ohanga.
There's a lot of research just started in New Zealand on understanding what the economic effects of climate change will be.
There are some sorts of crops that need to have a frost in winter to reset the biological clock of that particular plant. So you may find that you have to move, say, kiwi fruit from one region of New Zealand to another, because if it's too warm in winter, then kiwi fruit just won't prosper. Stone fruit needs a cold winter. It may be necessary to shift orchards of stone fruit much further south in New Zealand.
For New Zealand, we've got to think about not only what's happening in New Zealand in terms of, again, because agriculture is a big part of the economy, you know, whereabouts the production is going to come from, what will we actually be growing compared to what we're doing now. But also, you know, we rely on exporting a great deal, and it's what happens in other countries around the world, both our sort of trading partners and our competitors in terms of things like dairy production and so on.
We own 37% of New Zealand's fisheries, those big middle depth and deep water fisheries. What's going to happen to them? The critical food webs that support those fisheries, are they going to be around?
He wakaro pai ki te tipu kai, mena he paku whenua he rahi rānei. Tēnā pē he ropu mahi tahi i te marakai e tata ana ki a koe, a ka tae e koe te timata tēnei. Me haere ki te kōrero ki etehi no te ropu hua parakore o te taitokerau.
Taitokerau Organic Producers. We started the organisation in the early 1990s. It was a group of people that got together that saw the chemicals that were being pumped into our whenua, basically. How sick our people were getting, how sick the land was looking, and they wanted that to change. They also noticed that there weren't as many gardens that our people were doing anymore. I mean, people always kōrero about times of their nannies going in and helping them in the gardens, and they had huge gardens. Every marae had a garden. It's about sharing the knowledge that our tūpuna have to make sure that it's not lost. We talked about the reo being lost 20, 40 years ago, and we had the kōhanga movement start up to stop that. Well, I believe with our hua parakore movement, which is the organic movement, that we get that knowledge and retain that knowledge to save it for future generations. It's time for that movement to happen now. I can remember my nana gardening 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and she was doing organic gardening.
We're here in our garden, one of our mahinga in Naihipara. It's a whānau garden, it's a community garden. Many families have come together and put this garden together over here on this land.
The bottom line, if you can feed yourself and your whānau, then you've got true tino rangatiratanga. You're sustaining yourself for yourself. No one can tell you what to eat or how to eat if you can grow it and eat it yourself. Economically, it's a lot cheaper to grow your own kai than to buy it from the supermarket. Someone said to me the other day that a 5 kilo bag of spuds was $7. Well, I just, in 1 square foot, my 2.5-year-old chucked in some peru a couple of months ago, and we got 2 kilos of peru out of 1 square foot. And that would have cost us maybe 30 cents to do. So economically, it's so much more cheaper to grow your own kai, and it's so easy. Everyone talks about bucket gardens. Just get the cheap 99-cent buckets from the wariwhare if you have to, and fill it with soil out of your own garden. If you've got a bit more money, you can buy a bag. Chuck in a bit of sheep pellets. If you're lucky enough to live next to a farm, you can dig it up, dig it off the ground and put it into your soil, and then chuck in some peru, and that's it. You've got an instant garden. If you want to eat in a couple of weeks, then you've got to grow quick kai like the lettuces, beetroot. Easy enough to grab a couple of seeds, packet of seeds, $2.50 for a packet of seeds, and you can get nearly 100 lettuces out of $2.50. So you chuck a few in a small space. I do square foot gardening, which is 30 centimetre ruler. By 30 centimetre ruler, you can plant 4 lettuces in 1 square foot. So in a couple of weeks, when you plant your seeds, you can start harvesting your lettuce. So it's a real quick and easy method. If you don't want to wait a month, you can go down to, there's plenty of shops that not only sell organic seedlings, but will sell seedlings that are mitre 10. You can buy $2, you can buy 6 lettuces, and you can harvest those within a week. It tastes better. The kai that you buy in the supermarkets is growing so fast that it doesn't actually get a lot of the nutrients into the kai. It's just all water. So you're not sustaining your body, because all it's getting is water, and hey, I can get that out of a tap.
Some of these problems will be beyond the ability of communities to deal with and require the participation of local and national government. In 2009, an emergency climate summit was held in Copenhagen, where over 2,500 scientists met and released a statement warning governments to act now or prepare for war. This unprecedented warning to governments comes as a result of increasing frustration at the lack of action by politicians and governments worldwide.
I mean, there has to be, personal action, but there also has to be national, global action, and there has to be political action, basically. And really, I suppose at a political level, a real push towards developing these cleaner technologies. And I've heard it said many times, this idea that it's sort of like a wartime scenario, you know, in World War II, places like the US and Britain tooled up to put out all these weapons of mass destruction, essentially, or to, you know, build the destroyers and the aeroplanes and everything that were needed to win the war. And it is like that. It may, looking out the window, it might not seem like that. You know, the fighter planes are not going overhead, but things are changing fast enough that it's really a serious problem. We know from experience of things like the Second World War that it's possible, if we get serious enough about it, to really do something. But it will take that kind of concerted global effort at a political level to really push things along. Sure, we should all change our light bulbs and drive our cars less, but we also need that kind of political direction and political action. Absolutely. The sorts of changes that are coming up this century and next are really outside of anything that's happened for a very long time. So there's going to have to be a lot of adapting to different climates in the future, and that's going to be hard work. So yeah, I am concerned for my child. I have one son who's 12. By the time he's my age, I think there'll be enough change in the world to make the world a harder place to live, basically.
I think we've got to stop questioning whether this is going to happen and that it doesn't involve us, that we all have a role to play in sustainability and our contribution, obviously, to this climate change.
Climate change is going to present a range of opportunities and threats over the next 20 years and beyond. One of the opportunities is to begin planning now. You may want to begin with a review of the risks of your immediate area. What are the risks? Who will be affected? What can be done to minimise the dangers? By doing this, whānau, hapu and communities can prioritise their own specific climate-related problems. By establishing a climate change strategy, you can ensure the needs of your whānau, hapu and community are properly assessed by the community itself and then represented to local authorities, including iwi runanga. There are also things your community can do. Local leadership will be a key factor in how well local communities can organise themselves. Tuanuku.com is an online practical guide and information service to help leaders and communities organise and prepare for climate change. There is a copy of this film on the site that you can download and share with whānau, or you may want to organise a film showing with a larger group. There is information on how you can assess the threats in your immediate environment and some ideas on what you can do to minimise risks. There are also online forums and a news service to bring you the latest information on climate change. There are other useful tools, for example severe weather warnings, by text or email, so that you're always aware of potential storms and floods and other extreme weather events. Nā reira, ka wera haere te ao. E tere rawa tēnei āhuatanga. Ka tākere haia te āhuarangi. He tauraki whenua, he waipuke, he āwha, a ka iti haere te wai. Ka raru te ohanga o te motu. Ka raru hoki te ahumahi o te kai o te hihiko. Ka raru tātou mena kāre tīmata te mahi. Kia tūranga tira tātou, hei tauira ki te motu, hei tauira ki te ao.
Stand up, right. Stand up, right. My mom belongs to the real world, and she belongs to me. My man is after another girl. Yeah, he's my enemy. He treats me like a woolen glove. For my security, he wants to be the center of my world so I can bleed.
From the Munga to the alley to the deep blue sea, the word is heard as N-A-T-I-V-E. We don't hate, I take much delight, like 100,000 Hori when they holding the mic. And if you are cold, I bring you heat, like I brought the whole world my horrified beat. Unbelievable now, people just believe it's true. Never ever stand alone, no, not me.
I'm just trying to celebrate life and enjoy. I don't wanna battle you toys. I've got far too many friends and whānau to enjoy. Like Puti Puti, Naboa, Afina and Ruby, Kazaya, Jeru, Tewani and Kaluti. They'll never ever stand alone. Hell no, not these kids. It's all aroha, cause their poppers have already done all the ill shit. But the true number one is definitely these kids' moms. I've seen these queens and they love radiate like the sun. So I joined the black beat like Buck Shelford joining the scrum. All forward and toward a better future for our young. Mount Zion, Monga B-boy. What them hories are yelling.
From the Munga to the alley to the deep blue sea, the word is heard as N-A-T-I-V-E. We don't hate, I take much delight, like 100,000 Hori when they holding the mic. And if you are cold, I bring you heat, like I brought the whole world my horrified beat. Unbelievable now, people just believe it's true. Never ever stand alone. Never stand alone. Never ever stand alone. No, no, not me. Never ever stand alone. No, no, not me. Never ever stand alone. No, no, not me. Never ever stand alone. No, no, not me.
I can find fulfillment in my reason for life. Learning's sometimes difficult. See clearly into strife. I wish I could be strong.
lyric uplifting. I got the microphone, vocal ability. D-A-M-N-A-T-I-V-A. In the city, banging that native shit. I'm getting down on some lyric uplifting. I got the microphone, vocal ability. D-A-M-N-A-T-I-V-A. In the city, banging that native shit. I'm getting down on some lyric uplifting. I got the microphone, vocal ability. D-A-M-N-A-T-I-V-A. In the city, banging that native shit. I'm getting down on some lyric uplifting. I got the microphone, vocal ability.